Continue session 3 now, which is about ESG and green economy initiatives. And I would like to call upon the session chair and the panelists to take your seats as soon as possible on the main dais. Session 3, we have Mr. Aravinda Perera, Managing Director, Royal Ceramics Lanka PLC, Chairman PABC, over 41 years in the banking sector and functioned as the Managing Director of Sampath Bank PLC until his retirement. He is presently the Chairman of Singa Finance Lanka PLC, PABC PLC, Director of Rosel Bathware Limited, Snaps Residencies Private Limited, and Kosgulana Hydro Company Private Limited. Member of the Institute of Engineers and Chartered Engineer, is also a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants and fellow of the Institute of Bankers, Sri Lanka. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Aravinda Perera. Shall you put our hands together, give our session chair a big round of applause? Come on. Wake up, everybody. We have one more for lunch. Right, next we have talking to us on renewable energy transition and energy security, Professor T.M. Wijendra Jayalath Bandara, Chairman of the Sustainable Energy Authority and Professor, Department of Physics, University of Peradeniya. He is ranked as the second leading scientist in Sri Lanka in the field of energy engineering. Professor Bandara is a BSc, a Special Honours graduate, and secured his MPhil from the University of Ruhna and earned his PhD from the University of Peradeniya and the Chalmers University of Technology, Sweden. Sustainable Energy Authority, Professor Bandara is a distinguished figure whose commitment to sustainable energy, scientific research and education is well recognized. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor T.M. W.J. Bandara. Then we have Professor Buddhi Marambe, Senior Professor, Department of Crop Science, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya, talking to us on sustainable agriculture and food security. He's an academic at the Department of Crop Science of Faculty of Agriculture with more than 38 years of experience. Professor Marambe is extensively involved in teaching, research, and outreach in weed science, climate change adaptation, and climate-smart agriculture programs. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Buddhi Marambe. Then we have Mr. Chitral Jayatilake, Vice President, Cinnamon Nature Trails, talking to us on biodiversity conservation and wildlife tourism development. Chitral has many years been among Sri Lanka's best-known wildlife photographer, and having shown his work at numerous exhibitions since 2001, an avid nature law and conservationist, Chitral has published several books, and his passion to make documentary films has resulted in over 29 dedicated Sri Lankan documentaries. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chitral Jayatilake. So, session chair, we have the timer right in front of you. Each presenter will have 14 minutes, and at the end of the 3 presentations, we're going to have 20 minutes of Q&A. Over to you, Mr. Perera.
Thank you. Thank you, OPA, for inviting me. As session chair, I'm quite aware that we are half an hour late, and we are between you and your lunch. So there will not be opening statement. I'll go straight to the topics. We have 3 very interesting topics. 3 different areas: agriculture, energy, and biodiversity, and 3 eminent speakers. We start with renewable energy transition and energy security, and Professor T.M. Wijendra J. Bandara, Chairman of Sri Lanka Sustainable Energy Authority, and also Professor of Physics, University of Peradeniya. Over to you, Professor.
First of all, good morning, and I would like to thank OP and the organizing committee and to providing this opportunity. Thank you, Chairman and panel. Yeah, this is a highly important topic, renewable energy, because actually our modern lifestyle cannot be sustained without sufficient amount of energy, because every day all the devices, equipment utilized today are run on energy. Therefore, actually we cannot even think about living or sustain our modern lifestyle without energy. In some cases, actually, we haven't identified energy as such commodity. Yeah, this is a small outline of my speech. Actually, I will explain the background of renewable energy and energy security and so on. Then where we are today as a country, what is our renewable energy penetration and so on. Then renewable energy potential in Sri Lanka. Can we install sufficient amount of renewable energy? The resource availability is sufficient. Then importance of renewable energy in energy transition in Sri Lanka, how it is important to go for renewable energy. Barriers and challenges for renewable energy integration. Mitigation of barriers and challenges. Recommendations and conclusions. Actually, we mainly rely on biomass, petroleum, hydropower, and renewable energy nowadays. If you look at a few years back, actually, energy generation of the country is mainly from biomass, petroleum, and coal. Biomass, green, then the next one is petroleum, and so on. Actually, up to 2010 around, our energy demand was supplied by mainly biomass, petroleum, and from major hydros. Major hydro means it is a renewable. But after 2010, actually coal was introduced and gradually increased the coal contribution as well. And renewable energy, that means new renewable, that means apart from major hydros, solar, wind were introduced, and their integration was gradually increased. Actually, in 2022, when we look at 2022 statistics, actually biomass share was about 36%, petroleum share was 32%, and renewable energy share was small but increasing. This is the situation, the almost current situation. We mainly rely on biomass, petroleum, and so on. Hydropower for certain extent, and new renewable energies are emerging. Yeah, this is actually total energy supply in 2022 statistics mainly. This is actually total energy supply in the country, okay? Not for electricity only. Mainly coming from biomass, cooking, etc. We use large amount of biomass still. Then petroleum, 32%, coal, 12%, major hydro, again 12%. Renewable share is increasing. It was about 8% in 2022. Yeah, those statistics were related to total energy supply in the country. This is actually electricity generation. This curve actually shows our electricity demand, supply, etc. Actually, our energy demand is about actually 17,000 gigawatt hour. Nowadays, demand is about that. And this was supplied mainly by major hydros. Almost continuous amount of energy was supplied throughout the years. And then thermal power plant provided large amount of electricity needed for the country. And after 2010, coal was introduced, the black one, then coal usage was increased. Actually, this actually thermal and coal are non-renewable energies. And then green, new renewable energy penetration was also increased after 2006 around. Then micropower producers, Dendro, etc., also are now contributing for small amount of. This is the current situation of electricity generation. Mainly, power is coming from hydropower, thermal power plant, including oil and coal. Renewable energy penetration is increasing. Yeah, if we go for specific details, actually, CB hydropower plants have about 1,531 megawatts, about 27%. CB coal power plant have about capacity of 810, 14.3%. CB other oil thermal power plant installed capacity is 771, 13.6%. IPP thermal, that means private sector contribution, 270 megawatt, 5.1%. IPP wind, private wind power plant, 163, 2.9. CB wind, 100 megawatts, 1.9. Mini hydro, the percentage is 7.4. Capacity installed is 422 around. And biomass and waste, 52 megawatt, is about 1%. Then ground mounted solar, 187, it is increasing gradually. And rooftop solar, it is now it is close to 1,500 around here. It is last year 19.6, and rooftop solar LECO 253, 4.5. Actually, here we can see there are certain amount of contribution from renewable energy, but still we are relying on thermal power plants like coal and oil. But you know, as a country, energy security and other, when we consider other factors, we have to go for renewable energy, because most of these actually non-renewable energies are non-indigenous energy resources for Sri Lankans. Yeah, actually, so far we have kept certain amount of renewable energy. We have kept certain amount of energy, in particular hydropower plants. Almost actually major hydropower plants have been installed, and we are tapping solar power, wind power, etc. We have installed certain amount of these actually. Here I am showing the present situation of the country. Okay, the left-hand side curve shows the statistics of last Friday, 15th August, and the right-hand side curve is representing the yesterday, Tuesday. And here, large amount of energy is coming from coal. Sure, we need some firm power to stabilize grid and so on. But then, again, hydropower. Hydropower installed capacity is very high. Large amount of power is producing from hydropower. And actually, use of oil or thermal power plant is very minimum during the daytime. And a large amount of solar is penetrating. Actually, here the tables show our actually peak demand. Actually, our peak demand is in the daytime, actually, it is about 2,542. That means our peak demand in the daytime is less than 3,000 megawatts. It is about 3 megawatts. Actually, less than 3 megawatts. Right-hand side curve also shows that night peak and day peak all are less than 3 gigawatt. Yeah, renewable energy penetration, actually, it is left-hand side without major hydros. The other one Right-hand side curve is with major hydros. Anyway, we can see exponential growth of renewable energy penetration to our national grid. Okay? Then, to go beyond this stage, actually, we need lot of changes, technical and other type of changes. Otherwise, it is very difficult to absorb this intermittent energy resources, energy of this intermittent energy resources. Here, I am showing two curves. One is actually energy supply, and the other is peak generation by source at night peak. The power, bottom curve shows the power, peak power needed, and the top curve is energy by source, energy generation, electricity generation by source. The top curve is related to total energy, and green curve is energy generated from renewables, and the brown curve shows actually energy generated from non-renewables. Now we can see large amount of energy is given from renewables. About 30 gigawatt hour is providing from renewable energy. Less than 20 gigawatt is providing from non-renewables. Total demand is about 50. Now we can see mainly energy is coming from renewables. Yeah, this is statistics of last month. Okay, green color shows the energy produced from renewables, including hydro, wind, and solar. Our target in 2030 is to generate 70% of energy from renewables. Now we are very close to that target. For example, if you look at 19th of July, okay, renewable energy generation is about 76%. Next day, 20th, 73, 73, 73, 73, 76. Most of the days there. Okay? We are generating more than 70% from renewables. That means we are very close to our target, 70% electricity generation from renewables. This is not an easy task because of intermittent nature, weather dependent and other things. We have to balance the grid and so on, but we are going for our aims. Yeah. The other problem is, do we have sufficient capacity to generate renewable energy to fulfill our national need? I mentioned that our peak demand is less than 3 gigawatt, but we have large capacity. For example, World Bank recently did a study on offshore wind capacity. We can fix offshore wind power plant, shallow water wind power plant, up to 27 gigawatt floating solar. That means deep water offshore wind power plant. We can install up to 29 gigawatts. Our demand is about 3 gigawatts. That means we can supply our demand by using this. Again, if we come to ground mounted, then actually we have capacity. The Endel study showed that we have capacity for going up to 20 gigawatts. And lagoons, we can install up to 4 gigawatts. We have huge capacity. Then no difficulty to go for these renewables. Our energy supply can be get from these renewables. We have large capacity for solar. 13,000 hectares are sufficient to fulfill all our energy demand of the country. That means to generate about 3 gigawatts. What we need is 13,000 hectares. Then we can supply all our demand without oil, coal, or hydro even. Okay? Then we have big potential. Yeah. And when we go for these renewables, the country gets actually many advantages. Energy security is high because oil, thermal, coal, non-indigenous resources. We have to spend large amount of our foreign income to import oil, etc. They are environmentally unfriendly, emit carbon dioxide, cause global warming and other toxic gases as well. Yeah, there are several barriers to get that energy from renewables. Mainly acquiring land, get permission, environmental studies. We have to get permission from about 12 organizations to install solar power plants and so on. In essence, no, it is a difficult task. We need some regulatory changes because energy is highly important commodity nowadays. Yeah, the other problem, other barrier is insufficient infrastructure development. Transmission lines are not developed to the potential areas of the country. It is, because these potential areas are scattered in the country. Okay, hydro, solar, wind, potential areas. Then we have to build transmission line. And I mentioned that this energy generation is climate dependent. We call it as intermittent nature. Then we need to develop a system to balance our grid, because the supply is to fulfill the demand. We do not store energy. We have to utilize that energy. Then we need to develop a smart grid system, smart meters, and so on. In the past, actually, solar, especially, the integration is haphazard and not well planned. Therefore, nowadays, we are facing some problem, but we need some forecasting system for renewable energy generation. We need a smart grid and smart meters to know how much energy is generating from renewables, because the supply is to fulfill demand. If the demand is decreasing, then we have to decrease the supply. If the demand is increasing, immediately CB has to increase that supply. Yeah, there are so many barriers to overcome. Some are outlined here. Depending, because of the limitation of time, I am not going into details. But we need legislative changes to get that energy. Otherwise, to realize such project, it takes sometimes years. It is not good for the country. Because we have potential, we have to get that. Then every megawatt produced by renewables actually save our environment and preserve our foreign incomes. Yeah, that are the mitigation actions. We need legislative changes, and we have to speed up the process. We need actually one roof approval process, because getting approval from 12 organizations is actually a nightmare for developers. It takes large amount of time and cost as well. Yeah, energy security. Energy security means continuous supply of energy to fulfill demand. But here, according to my theory, we have to go for energy independence. Energy independence of a country, if we go for renewables, indigenous resources, we get energy independence. If we achieve energy independence, automatically we can attain energy security. That's what I believe. Yeah, this is my concluding remarks. The country has more than enough energy from renewables, and actually we have to utilize that energy. It gives many advantages to the country. The main thing is we can preserve our foreign income, we can preserve our environment. We need some legislative and other actually mindset changes to get that energy. Thank you very much. I think
Thank you, Professor. Thank you. He skipped so many slides, so unfortunately we didn't have time. Let me now invite Professor Buddhi Marambe, Professor of Agriculture from University of Peradeniya. He's going to talk about sustainable agriculture and food security. Over to you, Professor Marambe.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you, OPA, for inviting me for this occasion. What I'm going to present you today, based on what were presented before me, which had a lot of emphasis on digital transformations, mitigation activities, and so on, I'm going to present to you an existing problem that Sri Lanka has faced, which you have to amend very soon in order to make sure the digital transformation, everything will take place, Chairman sir, later. Because not later, it has to go parallel, but let me show you with data here and to show you how it's going to work right now. So I've been given two joint words as the topic, sustainable agriculture and sustainable food security. Sustainable food security. What we do all these things, what for? Is for sustaining the future, sustainable future, to make sure our young generations will have the fair share of their resources to make sure their living, their life will make comfortable. But Chair, the unfortunate part is that we have been talking about these type of things for quite a long period of time, very unfortunately. Sustainable development, to me, is the most misused word for the last decade in the whole world. Why? We still talk about sustainable development. We'll still talk about the problems that have hindered from achieving the sustainable development goals over the past 10 years, and the problems are the same. Most likely the magnitude of those problems are also the same. So we can be happy on one hand, the word sustainability and the problems that have created issues with respect to sustainability have sustained. So that's one part of the whole story. And that is important for us to understand if we try to plan for future in a proper way so that we can move forward. Then comes food security. A lot of people think it is an easy term, as the two words says. It's not that easy to understand. We all know there are several pillars when it comes to food security, but without using the FAO pillars here, let me bring the extracts of the definition of FAO and to tell you what it actually means. It talks about all these things. And more importantly, it speaks about having access to affordable, safe, and nutrition food today and tomorrow for everyone, and more importantly, based on their preference. If that is not achieved, there's nothing called food security being achieved. So it's a conceptual framework that have been brought in by Food and Agriculture Organization in 1996, which was upgraded in terms of terminology to highlight that food security also includes nutrition security in 2009. Because people talk of food and nutrition security nowadays, isn't it? But nutrition security, part and parcel, as you see, the fifth bullet point is nutrition. And that is the important component, as we all know, when it comes to food security. So, a misused term plus conceptual framework. And that's what we are working on, and I'm working on right now and making this presentation to you. Just to have an idea, you all know that. It's not to challenge your intellectual capacity by presenting this data. We have seen drops and improvements in our GDP. That's good. Good to hear that. Drop is painful. Increase in the GDP looks pretty good. But remember, when you start from negative, you can see how much we have lost in the whole process. So it's good to look at this positive growth, but we have started from a negative. Minus 7.3 to minus 2.3 is a progress. But it's compared to minus 7.3. That's something we have to understand when we try to work out economics as well as agricultural development as I see it in the future. So that's the basis of that I'm going to talk about. And if you see very carefully, the agriculture progress in 2023 has reduced marginally in 2024. If you see from the data from Central Bank, that has reduced. I'm not going to highlight data. There are minor differences, but then still there's a difference when you look at the whole country. That's the important point here. Looking further, let me take paddy as an example. Time period is limited. We have to fit into time, and so I will try to use only 2 crops to present to you the case that I'm going to present, so that all other factors can come into picture together, not separately. Don't forget that these aspects will have to move in. Let me take the case in paddy. A lot of people blame colleagues. Sri Lanka is not producing adequate rice. Our productivity is low. That's what people say. Look at this data of FAO. Look at where Sri Lanka is. Look at where other countries are. with respect to average production of paddy. In 2020 and 2021 were the best years Sri Lanka has ever had, producing quite a significant amount of paddy as well as increase in productivity with respect to paddy because of the technologies that we have. You will see how we made it. I will let you know by an example by moving on to the next slide. This is the total production data from 2015 to 2024. 2016 and 2017, colleagues, we had the worst climate that we have ever had since gaining independence. And our paddy yield lost by 34.4%. In 2017, the government of Sri Lanka had to import 747,000 metric tons of rice from different countries in South Asia to feed the nation for the last 3 months of 2017. But look what has happened thereafter. We have been increasing dramatically. And we reached a total production of 5 million metric tons in 2 consecutive years, with the same land area being cultivated, nearly 1.25 to 1.27 million hectares, nearly the same. So you cannot discount saying that it's because of the extending land extent. No, it's more or less the same land extent, and this is what we produce. Look at what happened when the government decided to ban importation of fertilizer and pesticides. Bang, it came down by 34.1% compared to the previous year. Values are massive. It's compared to the previous year. Values are massive. And Sri Lankan government had to import 783,000 metric tons of rice in 2023 to make sure, 2022 and 2023, to make sure our people are fed with. Because that's a government job. Making food available, especially the staple, that's the job of the government. Don't blame any government saying that you have imported rice. When the adequate rice is not available, if that is the main staple, what can the government do? Allow people to starve? Force unnecessary items through our mouths to our stomachs? No, that's not going to work. That is the job of the government. And the job of the government is also to guide through a system that we improve in our productivity status. You see, for the past 10 years, what has happened. But after 22, Chair, we are not showing that progress. Same varieties that gave 4.8 metric tons per hectare are not performing like that. So we did a lot of analysis to see what has gone in and what went wrong for us. Again, to give you some information, 2020, 5 million metric tons of paddy. What is shown in black lines are the rice availability. The dotted line is the rice requirement. So you can see 2020 and 2021, we have done fairly well. We have excess production. A lot of byproducts started coming up. People use rice for poultry feed. Right? That's why government came up with a circular in 2020 and 2021 prohibiting use of rice for anything other than human consumption. But the government forgot one thing. If you feed chicken with rice, chicken produces meat and protein. And that is also consumed by us, you and me. And that's a much needed protein, fulfill the much needed protein requirement. That's a killing factor. But of course, if the rice is lower than what is required in terms of availability, some action can be taken. But the action was taken at 2 times when rice was available in excess in 2020 and 2021. 2022, you know what happened. Little while ago, I showed you that policy decision brought down the rice paddy yield, brought down the paddy production. So naturally, the availability is much less than the requirement. We have to import, had to import. Then 2023, the paddy production is there as 4.5 million metric tons, Chair. And when it comes to rice availability, we had only 3.5 metric tons. Little below what we expected. That's why government had to import 167,000 metric tons of rice, starting from 4th December 2024 to 10th January 2025. That's how it went in. Whether that rice is used for human consumption or poultry feed, that's a different issue. We have no records. Unfortunately, Chair, we are a country, we know paddy production, what the paddy production is, but we do not know where the paddy produced is. We do not know. No one have found that still. Governments, we have seen in television, past governments, present government, trying to invade the facilities and to see whether there are excess amounts, could not find. But paddy should be somewhere, because those millers continue milling. Their stores will be going down when they continue milling. But they get the paddy production, isn't it? Otherwise, there will be no rice in the market. They still have a rice in the market. Interesting thing is we could not find still, Chairman sir, what has happened. 2024, last year, we barely reached the target, but that is killing. That is killing. This barely reaching the target is always killing depending on our requirements. I mean, that dotted line does not stay static. Dotted line does not stay static. I just use it to give you an indication of what has happened to our paddy production and rice availability and what to be done. I'm still showing you the problems, but I'm now going to show you another problem and come back to what other solutions are, especially after going through another example. Paddy is a plant, living thing. Paddy respire. You and me respire. Paddy take an air, use oxygen for respiration, exhale carbon dioxide like we do. That's what paddy do. Paddy plant. Any crop, any plant do the same. In addition to that what we do as well, paddy and other crops also produce food for us through a mechanism called photosynthesis, which we cannot do. We cannot do. Our bodies are not designed for that. So if you want the plant to produce food for us, we have to feed the plant. If you don't feed the plant, don't expect anything out of it. So I went and checked all recent details, Chairman sir, and tried to see how Sri Lanka has fed the paddy plant, paddy acreage. Strikingly, this surprised me. I went and showed this to the Honorable Minister of Agriculture also on 30th June. This data, I don't know, I'm fortunate for me to have access to that through the National Fertilizer Secretariat. But this is what it says. 2020 and 2021, we have distributed more than 90% of the fertilizer requirement for paddy production. So say more than 90%. Remember, we had 5 million metric tons in those years. 2022 is natural share. Fertilizer has come down. Still 58.6% has gone in because the ban was imposed in the mid of yellow season in 2025. So the fertilizer was there earlier. Still not adequate. What happened in 2023? What happened in 2024? Still, people have not used fertilizer. What do you expect from the plant? You target certain things, give only 60% of the requirement of the food. What will happen to you and me? If the chair decides you will eat only 1 spoon of everything, that may be good for health, but that's something that we have to decide. This is what exactly has happened. So unless plant is fed with, plant will never produce food to feed us. That's an important component that has to be kept in mind by all when it comes to their issues. Now, a lot of people talk about nitrogen issues. Chair, a lot of people have asked me also, saying that, we are using more urea. And I went through the websites, databases in the whole world, and I found one database, very interestingly, publication done in 2014. If you remember well, colleagues, if you can recall your memories, 2013 was the year there was a publication done by someone quoting Sri Lanka used the highest amount of fertilizer in land area, highest amount of fertilizer. Where that data came from, no one knows, but it flew like nothing. And that was the thing that went in continuously, showing that there is an issue with respect to nitrogen fertilizer. Yes, there can be. If you misuse any technology, there can be problems. You take paracetamol beyond the recommendation, it will create trouble. Right? We all know dose make the medicine or the toxin. So this is the important point to be kept in mind. So when I looked at this data, this is what I found in 2014. 10 years ago, but still it is important. Sri Lanka is at, now, please do remember, it's not to say Sri Lanka as the rock bottom. Not to say that. Just to present data, I took Sri Lanka as the bottom and every country that is above Sri Lanka in terms of excess nitrogen use. Excess. Look at the quantity Sri Lanka has used. In the whole country, in the cropland, we have used 27.6 kilogram excess. That is in 2014, not to say it's happening right now in the same way. But this was the chaos that was created in this country. I also could not find this data at that time, fighting against that thing. Look at China, Japan. Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, Germany, UK, US, Switzerland, Brazil, Nepal. Apart from Switzerland, United States produce rice, UK, very little quantities, Brazil, Nepal, every other country given here produce much more paddy in terms of average yield per hectare than Sri Lanka. So without looking at these statistics, it's impossible, Chairman Sir, that we can come to conclusion saying that our paddy is not productive. No, it is. It is. But treat the plant well. And that is the target that we have nowadays. I'm going quickly after these two slides. Maize, remember I told you, poultry feed is an issue always. Maize is the main energy supplier. 80% of the maize produced or 85% of the maize produced go to animal feed industry. Out of that, about 92% go for poultry feed. That's how things happen. Look at the way Sri Lanka has progressed in terms of maize production. Look at the level that we have reached in 2021, and look at the dip that we went through after this very bad, very poor policy making done by the government of Sri Lanka, despite many people going against that. Look at what happened to productivity. It was 4.43 metric tons in 2021. I do agree. It was not a stable thing. It was continuing, improving. But we made sure it dropped down. We, human beings, made sure it dropped down. It's not the climate change. That's an important point to remember here. So with all that, we recently recommended to the government, if you want to go ahead with maize production, focus on these 4 districts. These 4 districts produce 92% of the maize requirement of the country. In these 4 districts, farming community produce large quantity of maize per hectare. Average productivity is very, very high. So let's use them and make sure Mahaseason is focused on them to produce the maize quantities in Sri Lanka. And this is a pathetic story with all that what is happening. Just 4 days ago, Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, 2025, released a report which says these 2 things from among many others. From among many, these are the coping strategies that we do. Many people know it. Many people know it. But yesterday was a very interesting result coming from the government of Sri Lanka. That is pretty good. We have to hail that. You are talking about QR codes a little while ago in the presentations, right? And government decided for fertilizer from this season, you have a QR system functioning. So you have money is deposited, use it for fertilizer. At least people can trace it if it works well. I'm not an expert. Experts are there. You may be explaining that to me if I need it. But this is a good step move forward because it's the cash that is given to you. And you can do anything with that cash. And the paddy crop, maize crop, any other crop will not get the required fertilizer. Very unfortunate, and government spend colossal sum of money. It's not government ministers' money, it's our money, isn't it? You and me, we are taxpayers. It's our money coming up in this way, unnecessarily being utilized. So, Chair, this is the last slide that I'm going to show you, the recommendations. And there's one recommendation that come in which I did not speak of, but I will definitely tell you that with this digital transformation and all those things which are very important. So this is the recommendation. For this Maha and the next Yala, for this Maha, 25-26, and 26 Yala, do everything possible to make sure farmers apply the recommended dosage of fertilizer. Forget about other environmental aspects and so on. Make sure they apply recommended quantities of fertilizer. Then the yield will pick up. Let's try to manage it with a lot of technologies bringing in after Yala season next year. That will be the way out. We cannot do wonders when we have a low productivity, low production. No way. So you bring it up and make sure it move forward. And there's a lot of work going on, Chair, even right now for integrated nutrient management, crop protection, and the use of UAVs, drone technology is picking up dramatically. The Government Department of Agriculture is very soon to release the recommendations of the second version of the recommendation of using drones for agricultural purposes in Sri Lanka. And the last bullet point, which I said, it's not there. Cha, the problem in Sri Lankan society is people have created technophobia and chemophobia, which is very difficult to people to take it out of their mind. When the weed called Parthenium hysterophorus was found in Sri Lanka, The phobia that was spread around was that in year 2000, if you touch Parthenium, you will get serious dermal issues. If Parthenium plant grows close by, then your kid will get asthma. But now, after 25 years, Chair, people even smoke Parthenium leaves, calling them Indian ganja. So that fear is no more. No matter, when you create a phobia and when people start finding that it is not true, this is exactly what happened. The repercussions are much more serious than those. So, Chair, let me wind up. Colleagues, thank you very much for your patience hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. It's good to know that there are people like you who are so passionate about our food security. So we discussed about two, energy security and food security. The last speaker, Chitral Jayatilake, who is head of eco-tourism, Cinnamon Hotels, is going to talk about biodiversity, conservation and wildlife tourism development. Over to you, Chitral. Hope you are going to touch upon these tuskers we are losing.
Well, I thought I'll stay away from the controversy, but good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute pleasure to be here to talk to you at this very, very prestigious forum. Mr. Chairman and my fellow panelists, I'll try and keep to the time before the clock starts running. I thought I'll just say that I'm a huge fan of both you gentlemen, the service you do for this nation and the data you share with society. And it's truly an honor for me to speak after you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been asked to speak a little bit about biodiversity conservation, and then, of course, wildlife tourism, which is my subject at Cinnamon. So I thought, when I want to talk about biodiversity conservation, let's talk about where the Sri Lanka's biodiversity is, a few issues that are facing it, and what we can do to protect it for longer. Fueled by climatic and geographic conditions, ladies and gentlemen, we live in an island which is just 65,000 square kilometers. An island smaller than Ireland. Yet, with over 22.5 million people, fed by 2 monsoons, we have over 6,000 elephants in the wild. The last record from the DWC is actually even a little more. We have over 500 birds, that includes the migration that happens from September till March. And then 247 reptiles and over 110 amphibians. Now this is what you call truly a wild and a pretty island. Now the magic here is that we have the Central Highlands at 6,500 feet in the middle, and we've fed by 2 monsoons, which is the southwest and the northeast. So each time a monsoon hits the island, it creates a rain shadow on the other side of the highlands. And that included with high humidity, temperature fluctuations, which is a recipe for speciation. As a result, Sri Lanka is known amongst 36 other destinations in the world as a biodiversity hotspot. Now that's a very important tagline to be amongst with, because all these 36 biodiversity hotspots in the world amounts to, ladies and gentlemen, just 2.5% of the Earth's land surface. And amazingly, 50% of all endemic plant species and 43% of birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians live there. So these biodiversity hotspots and the jungles that are contained there are truly precious. Now this is where Sri Lanka is. We are clustered with the Western Ghats of India. And to be qualified for the biodiversity hotspot tagline, there are 2 ingredients you need. We need a high percentage of endemicity and to have lost about 70% of your original forest cover. Now that's not a good thing to happen, but once you get there, you are classified as a biodiversity hotspot. Now let's look at some stats. Sri Lanka has 14% of land under the Forest Department protected, which is very good. Then we also have about 11% of land under the jurisdiction of the Department of Wildlife Conservation. So that's roughly about 1/4 the country is strictly protected. Yet only 4% of all that land makes up the wet zone lowlands, that is the Singharaja, the highland montane forest, that is Peak Wilderness and Houghton Plains. Now that is where 90% of all endemicity lives. So that we have a small problem. Habitat loss, ladies and gentlemen, is the single most adverse reason for small and large species disappearance. During the colonial period, the British Empire cleared the highlands for plantations, and we lost the elephants there, and many others. The wet zone in the lowlands have been systematically cleared for human population and the industrial development. Land is also needed for an expanding cultivation to feed a growing population. We are well equipped with laws to protect the conserved lands because we got a fantastic FFPO, strongly legally binding, a Forest Ordinance Act, and the National Environmental Act. Yet, with all this, we are very proud to say that we have the largest Asian elephant congregation in the world. But we are also home, ladies and gentlemen, to the largest human-elephant conflict in the world. 10% of Asia's elephants live in Sri Lanka. But just look at the numbers. Sadly, in 2019, the threshold of 400 elephants lost during this conflict annually crossed the line. It was only last year that was suppressed beyond 377, but the record numbers look as if we might touch that worrying stage of 400 even this year. So now we are losing 400 elephants in a year, and that's, if you take 2 years loss, that's almost equal to some of the Asian countries' population. Now let's look at the other side of the story, the human toll. In 2018-19, we sadly crossed 100 humans lost in this conflict annually. Now that's a staggering loss. During the pandemic, I actually watched Perera news. I could run on all other mediums. And I saw a year 5 scholarship student going to school for her exam, and chairman, the father was killed by an elephant. The body was covered with a white cloth. This child was forced to face the exam. She went and worshipped the dead body of her father and proceeded to the exam, and I had tears in my eyes. So the casualties are on both sides of the fence, both human and elephant. Now let's look at the organizations that are well equipped and doing a great job in conserving. We got the Forest Department. We have the Central Environment Authority, the CEA. Then we have the DWC, which is the Department of Wildlife Conservation. Then we have the CCD, which is the Coastal Conservation Department. And what we need is to find an equilibrium between development and conservation, because when these two collide, we seem to have always a disaster. Having said that, let's look at a little bit about expanding and utilizing these resources we have in this country, which we call wild and beautiful, for wildlife tourism, which has been my life's work for the last 20 years. It started in the 2000 season, projecting and promoting the leopard in Sri Lanka. Then it went to 2005-06, when Lonely Planet classified Sri Lanka to have the largest animal congregation in the world, which is the gathering at Minneri and Kaudulla. And 2007-08, we were very proud to present to the world Best for Blue, designed by my friend Gihan De Silva. And we now have these keystone species around which everything else happens. Let's look at the clockwise traditional tourism map in Sri Lanka. People arrive at Katunayaka, they generally go to Hobarana side or Dambulla. They explore the cultural triangle. Then they may go to Trinco, may not. They will come back, do a 2.5-hour drive to Kandy. It's a must-see. Tick the box, go to the temple. Then go to the highlands, Norelia. They may go to Horton Plains. Then they'll go to Alla Vellavaya, which is, Alla has become a huge destination now. It's honestly amazing. Then they'll come to the deep south, Yala, one-night stay, see the leopard, if you're lucky, and then come to the southern beach line and spend there 5 nights to absorb the sun. Now, this is the traditional route which Sri Lanka has been famous for 45 years. But I've broken the ecological zones of Sri Lanka, since I have 6 minutes, I'm very comfortable now, to 10 segments. Ladies and gentlemen, look at the northern plains, Jaffna and the islands around it. This is the southernmost point for over 100 million birds that flies in the Central Asian flyway. Because south of Sri Lanka, there's nothing beyond, just ocean. And all these birds from 8 different countries fly down on the Asian flyway, land in Jaffna and Mannar. So there is a magnitude of a gathering which we haven't seen. We are very proud. We promote the elephant gathering at Minneri and Kaudulla, which is happening as we speak. If you go this evening, I can show you 200 elephants at Minneri. But there's a million birds that comes and settles down in the coastline of Jaffna and Manana. That is another type of gathering. Then we have the Kodiyar Bay and Trincomalee, which I call the city by the sea. Picturesque, but it is always great to see the marine mammals there. You get the blue whales, you get the sperm whales, you get bride's whales every month of the year. Then we have Vilpattu, the land of lakes. These lakes are the only natural lakes in the country. These are limestone basins. It doesn't have an intake or an outward tap. It just collects rainwater and holds it through the year. And that's an amazing ecosystem. Then we have grey francolins, a highly endangered bird in the Jaffna Peninsula. We have the Indian kosas, highly endangered. People come here to this country just to photograph these birds. Then you have the blue whales in Trinco. This is magical. And then the sperm whales performing in pods as they go about doing their thing. And of course, one photograph which defines whale watching in Trinco. And you have the Swami Rock at the back and the largest animal that ever lived Earth. I'm going to skip this a little fast because to catch up with time. And that's Vilpattu. Leopards on the white sand, it's just magical. And of course, the chameleons. Let's look at the other region, the North Central Province. Minneria, Kaudulla, this to me is elephant country. 300 to 400 elephants congregate every year. As the tanks recede, the tank bed grows grass. There is water, there is food. It's like an elephant supermarket, and the shrub jungle gives them cover during the midday heat, and the elephants come out and perform. You go for 2 days, ladies and gentlemen, I'll guarantee you will see the full spectrum of elephant behavior. A film with BBC 4 times there, it is simply magical. Then you also got the moist Uva Basin. It is the connection between the sub-montane forest and the dry zone. Open plains, tall trees, very important for all the big wildlife and the bird life. And Minneria. This is the famous twin elephant birth, which happened 5 years ago. And a few images to showcase how wonderful this country is and the Uva Plains. Let's look at now the lowland wet evergreen forest. Now this is a jewel. This is Singharaja. We have our own rainforest in the island. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, 11,000 hectares of precious land that holds all the endemicity. If you walked in the jungles for 3 nights, we can guarantee seeing almost up to 20 of the 31 endemic birds in the country. Then, of course, the highland montane rainforest, which is Peak Wilderness and Horton Plains, where you see the sambar deer, the birds, the Eurasian otter, and, amazingly, the mountain leopards. Look at what the rainforest has to offer. The Pseudophyllodes auratus. These are point endemics. This is the Cularis. These guys are only found in the eastern side of Singharaja, which we call the morning side. Just point endemics. And if you lose that there, they're lost to the world. And then, the Serendipscops owl, discovered and introduced to the world in 2004 by a Sri Lankan expert. So we have so much to offer. But even a colorful bird, like a crimson-headed barbet, just reminds us the amazing colors of nature. This is a sambar deer in the Horton Plains, and of course, my favorite, the mountain leopards. And the last bit, let's look at Colombo. Now, this is a bustling city with all the cacophony of a city, but we have more than 20 dive sites dotted around the coastline. Now, we've forgotten that, and we have to now build and promote Sri Lanka as a dive destination. If you go to Galle, all the way on the southern coastline, all the way up to Aravinda, there are amazing dive sites. And north of Aravinda lies the first purpose-built aircraft carrier that was sunk by the Japanese Air Force way back in the World War II, that is Hermes. But of course, it lies at a technical dive depth of 58 meters, so not everybody can go there, but if you can go there, that is still magic. Then, my favorite part of the country where I lived and grew up with my father, Yala and the Kumana group of sanctuaries, which is the home of the leopard. Now, this is where the big cat performs for you, and it is truly magical that we have this, which is Sri Lanka's showcase of conservation, ladies and gentlemen. But today, I might also say that Yala has become a bit of a victim of its own popularity. Because when controls are not brought at the right time, you can have a little bit of traffic while watching the leopards. So this all happens at Yala National Park. Imagine a large leopard ignoring 50 jeeps and just going about doing its thing. This is Botswana type of magic, right here. Now, when you put all these 10 regions together, you have a magical and a wondrous island that is smaller than Ireland, as I told you, yet resonates with nature. This is the magic of Sri Lanka. We need to use the fullness of it, the diversity of it, and keep promoting this magic so that we can spread the tourism, the numbers, and ensure that we have a great experience. For that, we need to go and do the promotions. We were very happy to join the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau last month to create the first Sri Lanka Wildlife Festival in London at our own High Commission. And then as you just, I'm about to wind up, I'd like to show you the magic of this nation's natural world. We have chameleons to leopards and blue whales at sunset. There are places in Pigeon Island you can dive and snorkel with turtles. Snow-capped mountains and grasslands in a particular month of the year. Perfect moonrises over the mountains, Knuckles, and a location called Mihintale, which was a place where Buddhism was received in the country. So with all that, I'm going to wind up with the last slide. As you look at a picture which has both my girls 10 years ago walking the wild coast of Yala, Mr. Chairman, I thought I'll find something to wind up the session artistically because I'm in love with this country's natural world. For that, I was looking through my books and I found a poem by Credo in the book written by Mr. John Still called The Jungle Tide. And I quote, the poem goes like this about Ceylon. Mountains and woods and the winds that blow over them, meadows and downs and the wild flowers that cover them, rocks and ravines and the jungles that smother them, all these I love with a love that possessed me. But more than all these, I worship thee. Sea and the shoreline and the shells gods squander there, corals and pools and the wild things that wander there, silence and caves and the thoughts men ponder there. All these I love with a love that enchants me, but deeper in the depths springs love for thee. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Friends, we are back on time. So, question time, my first question to Professor Marambe. I heard long time ago, 25 years ago, that when it snows in Nevada desert, Californians know what to grow in the coming year. Probably not the exactly correct example. How about agri-planning in this country?
Agri-planning is taking place at different level, but prescription of what crop to be grown is not there. Of course, it comes in a plan called agroecological region-based crops. When you enter a certain district, you will find a board saying there are certain crops that can be cultivated. But it has been very difficult for Department of Agriculture and the provincial departments to make people move out of that segment. So, as you quite correctly said, we are also still discussing and debating to see how much Kiri Samba should we cultivate in this country, right? In last season, only 7.8% of the cultivated extent included Kiri Samba. Now, depending on the price of this month harvest, then the farmers will start thinking of growing it again. So it's difficult to have this prescription right now. It's not to say it's impossible, but we can do that while making sure this QR system being identified. With that QR system, I strongly believe that even this prescription, at least for certain areas of paddy cultivation, can be taken place.
Over to you. Questions? Or I'll fire the second question. To Chitral, is the legislation in this country adequate to look after the biodiversity and wildlife?
Mr. Chairman, I actually think it is adequate. There is very strong laws. The FFPO and the Forest Ordinance Act is absolutely legally binding. But at times we feel that the legislation is not adequately implemented, and that is the problem. There is enough laws in this country to protect its wildlife, and I believe it will remain so.
Over to you. Questions?
Yes.
Yes, the lady over there.
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. And I would like to give a question to Mr. Chitral Jayatilake related to this habitat, animal and human conflict. We were discussing in the morning also, so I think we got the correct person now today at this moment. So now actually I would like to know that now as this conflict exists, we all know that about it, and the wildlife conservation act separately, and maybe the habitats development, the regions that they will develop separately. So is this the reason that how can we find out the real cause and how to mitigate these things by acting as a multidisciplinary approach? Because there are so many areas related to this, not only wildlife separately, the settlements and habitats developments and then the physical planning, all these people should get together in resolving this matter. So how would you advise and how will you enlighten us the present situation?
Thank you, ma'am. That is a very comprehensive question. And I wish I have a bit of time to discuss this, but since we don't, we're all hungry, we'll try and touch on each of it. And at the last half of your question was a part of the answer. We all have to chip in into this. There is no one department or one government is going to do this. We are all, we inherit, and the constitution of this country gives us the right to protect and enjoy its biodiversity. That is written in the constitution. But the complications of habitat loss is simply because of an urgency to develop. I know this country has been through a very, difficult period in terms of a civil war. Then, of course, we faced into so many other issues of Easter issues with these Easter bombs. Then we went into a global pandemic and so on and so forth. But all of a sudden, in patches, Sri Lanka seems like in many other countries, in a major rush to develop. And that rush makes us forget that these things have to be done sustainably. The human-elephant conflict began 30 years ago, right? And I don't want to go into an absolute reason. It is very complicated. But it is a problem that has been inherited by almost 7 governments now. And there are governments that has done more than others, but every government has tried to mitigate this. But that is the key, madam. We need to mitigate it. We can't stop it. Because imagine we're losing close to 400 elephants for the last 7 years. And there is still close to over 6,000 elephants in the wild. Every elephant lost is painful. So is a sambar deer shot by somebody for protein, or a spotted deer, or a wild boar. But we feel it a little closer to our hearts because this elephant, this animal is connected to us through our culture, our religion. I was photographed in the Kandi Perera in front of the Pathiripu 3 weeks ago, and my hair stood on end. I almost imagined how the royalty would have watched this from the Pathiripu back then. So we are naturally connected to this animal. But what I would say is we can only mitigate it for now. The numbers that is on the chart, which is close to 400, let's look at reducing it by 10% year on year. And if we can reduce it by 25% on the human side, it's even better. Because my personal view, this is not a scientific view, I've worked in the jungles for 40 years of my life. My personal view, ladies and gentlemen, is that you cannot protect the elephant until you protect the livelihood of the people who lives with the elephant. So it's a complicated process, and all of us, all institutions, all tourism stakeholders, and each of the governments that are in power has a stake in it.
Yeah, we are at the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects. We are in the process of doing a study, a group of architects. So definitely we will meet you one day.
My daughter just passed out as a young architect, so I have a connection to you. I look forward to meeting up with you.
I'm Dilipini Dimel, President of Sri Lanka Institute of Architects.
Lovely to meet you, ma'am.
Next question, please. Yes, over there.
Yes, with the interest of the time, let me ask the question from Professor Bandara. Now, it's clear that currently Sri Lankans are more towards using electric vehicles. So, how do you see that the Sri Lankan future? Can we move out from this fossil-based usage to electricity? How do you see that trend?
Yeah, thank you very much for raising that timely question. Yeah, going for EVs, actually, In my talk, I mentioned that we have big potential for going for renewable energy. We can generate much more energy than we need by using renewables. At the moment, I also showed that a certain amount of energy is producing from non-renewables, diesel, and non-indigenous resources like diesel and coal, etc. If we increase number of EVs in the country, we get a fixed amount of energy from solar, hydro, and wind. Then actually the energy needed for that specific EV should be produced by CB using thermal power plant. Then it is a matter of fueling car or fueling CB power plant. Definitely we have to go for EVs for sure, but we have to install sufficient amount of capacity using renewables. Thereafter, we can give tax concessions for EVs and so on if we can generate that energy utilizing renewable energy. We have another alternative as well. For example, the government can decide when you import EV, we give a package. You have to install solar to attain the energy used for this specific car. If you are using 1 megawatt per month, perhaps you can generate that energy by using solar anywhere else in the country. Then you can provide that energy to national grid by installing solar, and then it's nice. Then we can we have already suggested this kind of mechanism. We can give package to car importers. Please go it together with solar package, for example. Thank you for raising.
Last question, please. Yeah, quick one.
Professor Wijendra, my question is about, in your slides, about the distribution of energy production. Waste management was only 1%, that's biogas. Now these days we hear during this Perera period, there was 325 metric tons of waste. And before that, there was 600 something again during that period. Then in all cities, we see the waste is, now it's a problem. But what is the mechanism that we have? There was a period where the government had a plan to use this waste. It will give multiple benefits. So what is the situation as at now, Professor?
Yeah, again, thank you very much for raising a valid question. Here, actually, when we consider environmental concerns, actually using those waste to generate electricity and power energy, it is good. But in the other hand, the problem is actually the generation cost is a little bit higher when we use that. But to dispose that waste, we have to spend certain amount of large money. Therefore, we have to consider cost and benefit. The environmental benefit we attain and the energy provided to grid. Because dispose those things, we also have to spend money. Therefore, certain places actually we are installing those waste energy power plant. Mathura thing is going, the Central Environmental Authority also supporting, because the government has to fund those projects by using government money, because the waste management is also an issue in the country. If we consider it as a power plant, it is not a profit. Okay, that means the generation cost is high, but we have many other benefits. Therefore, we have to go for that. Actually, SCA as well as other organizations are supporting this kind of projects. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, give applause to this fantastic team. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can we have on stage once again Mr. Sujiva Lal Dahanayaka, President, Mr. Jayanta Galaheva, President-elect, Ms. Ruchira Gunasekara, past President OPA, and Mr. Banu Vijayaratna, Chairman of the Session Planning Committee, to present the tokens. Right, we're going to quickly finish off this part. And the first token of appreciation being presented to Professor T.M. W. Jayalath Bandara. And the next token of appreciation being presented to Professor Buddhi Marambe. Mr. Chitral Jayatilake. And then to our session chair, Mr. Aravinda Perera. Right, let's quickly take a group photograph. It's time to take a group photograph. Mr. Perera, if you can join the group photograph, please. Right, so with that, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up the session 3. Up next, it's all about enjoying the lunch. Lunch hour is only 30 minutes. Lunch hour is only 30 minutes. So what's the big deal? So you have time till 2 o'clock to enjoy lunch. Right? So the lunch is being served at the back. You have ample 30 minutes to enjoy lunch. See you all sharp at 2 o'clock. Thank you.